Is that really what he wants Canadians to be focused on? Is that the sum total?
It's definitely a clown show around here. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Mark Carney addressing the nation, came out with his big grand speech. This is a pre-budget speech, budget coming out November 4th, opening a window into what we can expect from his magical deficit-busting budget. And, well, the speech didn't go to plan. All the pundits were kind of shocked. Not only that, we've got a liberal pundit who absolutely rips apart Mark Carney's speech. Carney humiliates himself during the speech in front of a bunch of university students. Let's jump into this. So leading into this event, before Mark Carney shows up here, we got Vasi Capellos and Nick Nanos talking polling numbers. Even Nick Nanos is saying that Carney doesn't have a lead anymore.
You know, it's interesting, Vashi, when we look at the latest Nanos tracking, it's a statistical coin toss between the Liberals and the Conservatives. They are both within the margin of error of the weekly tracking, so it's a very tight race between the two parties. The interesting thing is that the Liberals do well among voters that are over 50. The Conservatives do better among voters that are under 50. Might explain, Vashi, why Mark Carney is talking to students, because, you know, the Liberals are trailing among younger Canadians who are feeling crushed trying to pay for food and groceries and for housing.
Why do you think that they have failed to land with their messaging in both the election and since with this group?
I think a lot of it has to do with how effective the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre have been at focusing on pocketbook issues, you know, the rising cost of food and groceries, the cost of housing. Pierre Poilievre was first on this issue when Justin Trudeau was leading the Liberal Party. And, you know, the Conservatives own that as part of their brand. You know, what's clear, at least for the Liberals, is that if they want to have an advantage, that they have to do better among young voters. And, you know, the thing is for the Conservatives, it's kind of like the flip side of that. They have to somehow connect with voters that are over 50 years of age who really right now prefer Mark Carney over Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, the problem is those voters are watching CBC every night and being indoctrinated by endless propaganda.
Just over a month ago, let's say, or after the summer, the Liberals still had a pretty sizable lead over the Conservatives.
I think basically the honeymoon's over. You know, the Canadians in the last election, for a significant portion, they were willing to give the Liberals a try. You know, the fact of the matter is that going into the election earlier this year, that the Liberals were dead. It looked like they were finished. And Mark Carney managed to kind of turn that ship around and create those new opportunities. I think
it's part Mark Carney, his experience, him being Mr. Banker, Mr. Globalist, but it's also a major part of that is just Trudeau going. If you stuck anyone else in there, someone new, not one of the Liberals who are currently there, but somebody else, even if you stuck, say, Christy Clark in there, you would have seen the Liberals surge up, maybe not as high as Mark Carney did, but you would have seen much better numbers than Justin Trudeau. People were tired with the childish, juvenile snowboard instructor as a prime minister.
And the kind of speech that we see Mark Carney give, these are not, like, he's not, I wouldn't suggest a soundbite prime minister, really. Like,
though he's doing pretty good ones.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I find that his, it's thoughtful and more he's willing to take the time, it seems, to explain. Whether or not he's going to hold the attention of the audience, I don't know. So you're saying he's got some pretty good sound bites, but what do you make of his style?
What I meant, I guess, was that he doesn't sound like he's sloganeering, and that he
doesn't sound like he's sloganeering. We can give ourselves more than anyone can ever take away. The relationship has ruptured. There's a rupture. The relationship with America's over. Mark Carney is full of slogans. Every politician uses slogans. This is a bunch of lies once again on the CBC.
It's authentic because he's actually explaining things in a real way. And I think that there's a huge appetite for that. And that's in stark contrast to the communication style that you see from Pierre Poilievre, who is...
Oops, Donald Trump. I mean, Pierre Poilievre. These clowns can't be serious. This grift is over. There's a reason why they're not telling us how many people have subscribed to CBC Gem and are paying $72 a year, because the numbers must be awful. And not only that, they're using lawyers to try to hide the numbers. It's this kind of crap.
All slogans and really doesn't get into depth on almost anything.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't get into depth in anything. But Mark Carney saying Canada's ruptured. There's a rupture. This is such vast depth. Mark Carney has just started his speech, and right off the bat, he brings out his signature slogans, directly contradicting to what that CBC host was just saying.
The world is more dangerous and divided. The U.S., as we all know, has fundamentally changed its approach to trade.
It's raising its tariffs to levels last seen during the Great Depression. And the scale and the speed of these developments are not part of a smooth transition. They're a rupture.
It's a rupture. It's a dangerous world. These are dangerous times. It's always the same crap from this guy.
And they mean that our economic strategy needs to change dramatically. And they mean as well, even though we both lived through time, or I lived through times of immense change, your future will not be the same as my past.
He's desperately trying to sell his bull crap to the youth of Canada that the Liberals have sold out. So I jumped over to CTV here. They've got better audio. And Mark Carney just fear-mongering the whole thing. I'm not going to play his whole speech here. He just fear-mongering like he did with the election.
Our relationship with the United States will never again be the same as it was, even though in this new world of protectionism, we have the best trade deal of any other country, and we're working to make it even better still.
This is dishonest misrepresentation. He's making it seem like he had something to do with that. He's even said that before and put the word now in there, insinuating that he got that deal. He did not get that deal. He had nothing to do with that deal. Once again, this is dirty Liberal tactics. That's why the Liberals keep winning, because they are dirty at politics. They're bad at governing the country. They're great at enriching themselves.
Now, at the same time that all of this is happening, technology is changing the way we work, live, and communicate. When I was in graduate school, the World Wide Web, as we then called it, was that was the modern term of the information superhighway, if you ever heard of that. The World Wide Web, as we then called it, was just beginning. My generation was connected by wires, yours is connected by code, and yet our society today is becoming ever more disconnected. Our public square is fragmented by online echo chambers, where truth and fiction can be hard to tell apart, and where contrasting ideas tend to polarize, not persuade.
Yeah, this guy wants to get rid of the echo chambers, as he calls them, the places where truth comes out that dispels the garbage this guy keeps spewing.
In the context of all this, as Canadians, we have relearned some key lessons over the course of the past year. We have to take care of ourselves because we can't rely on one foreign partner. We have to take care of each other because we are stronger together. And we've learned that now is not the time to be cautious, because fortune favors the bold.
Here it comes. Big spending. What is it? 100 billion? How much is it?
We can give ourselves much more than anyone else can ever take from us.
I can't believe it. He used a slogan, this time in French. This guy is so ridiculous. They talk about slogans. He literally has said two of those slogans I mentioned just before the announcement here.
There was the sense of having our hands firmly on our
We used to
future.
build things in this country. We can build again. We used to explore this country. We can chart new courses again. We used to take big, bold risks in this country. It is time to swing for the fences again.
What was that? Did you guys see his mouth? He did it again. Duping delight as in any positive effect experience that occurs in anticipation of, during, or following a lie.
It is time to swing for the fences again.
What's this right there, Carney? You can see brings that smile down. What does he know that we don't know? What is he spending our money on? This guy can't contain his little smile there. That was a very serious moment there. Why did he smile?
We learned a little lesson about swinging for the fences a couple nights ago, as I recall.
It always comes back to sports with this guy. This guy's not a real prime minister. He's not a serious prime minister.
And this is what the upcoming budget will be about: building, taking control, and winning. We will make generational investments with a plan to protect our communities, our borders, our way of life. We will build a stronger economy where everyone has a chance to get ahead. And we will empower Canadians with new opportunities, better careers, and a lower cost of living. We start with protection. Safe communities attract people and families to put down roots, get a home.
So he just goes on to ramble about how they're going to hire 1,000 RCMP, they're cracking down on the street fennel, how they're doing all these great things to secure our borders. It's all nonsense. They're not doing anything. Otherwise, there wouldn't be home invasions literally every single day.
As we build safer streets and stronger borders, we also must reinforce our sovereignty in that more dangerous and divided world. And that's why Canada's new government is undertaking the largest increase in defense spending in a generation, or in generations to be more precise. And we're forging new partnerships with allies, such as the European Union, to strengthen our shared security.
What good does that do? Why do we have anything to do with the European Union? We should be strengthening our security with the United States, you know, the biggest economic powerhouse in the world that is just south of us. So he just goes on to brag about the One Canadian Economy Act, like it's some sort of big deal.
At the end of June, we passed the One Canadian Economy Act to remove federal barriers to internal trade and to fast-track the approval of nation-building projects. In August, we opened the Major Projects Office, which serves as a single point of contact to get those nation-building projects built faster.
All he did here was take an existing office that already existed. He hired his colleague, friend, Don Farrell, someone who was likely pre-screened by these guys at Brookfield, who are part of this deal here between TransAlta and Brookfield that Don Farrell did. After realizing she's a team player for Brookfield, Carney brings her in. She has to resign from ATCO's board, Canadian Modular Housing Company, and she's getting paid $577,000 per year. That's more than the Prime Minister of Canada, more than the $70,000 a year more. He's announced nothing new here. He just goes on to rant. He's mentioned the major projects, the ones he's highly conflicted with. He's mentioned modular housing. He's mentioning eco-green.
We'll recognize that in today's global economy, we have to build sustainably. It's not just a moral duty, it's also an economic imperative. It is a moral duty, but it's an economic imperative.
What do you see there again?
Just a moral duty, it's also an economic imperative. It is a moral duty, but it's an economic.
You see it? He just can't help himself. Potential consequences of duping delight. Previous research has established that unethical behavior is affected by situational variables, which can result in high rates of cheating and lying. For example, cheating may increase when it benefits others, when lying is seen socially normative, or when social control is depleted. He's rolling out his net zero agenda here, and he just is like a giddy kid in a candy store. He can't help himself.
It's an economic imperative. Now, above all, we will build Canadian. The new security threats the world is bringing to our shores means we're making the biggest investments in our military in generations. But up until now, more than 70 cents of every dollar goes to the United States. With our new Defense Investment Agency, we will make sure we build more of our security and defense capabilities here at home, creating new careers in aerospace and shipbuilding and cyber and AI for Canadian engineers, technicians, and scientists.
Don't worry, though. He's still going to lock down those deals with Lockheed Martin because he's invested in Lockheed Martin. Wouldn't want to miss out on that cash cow, would he?
And with new orders for homes, infrastructure, and defense equipment becoming orders for Canadian suppliers, we will be our own best customer. So the welder who's working on a contract in St. John's can get a full-time job.
This is not a solution, man. Our economy works because we can make money off of the Americans. They're a huge market. We make a ton of money off of them. That's how this works. We can't give ourselves more than they could ever take away. I can prove it. This is it here. You can see this is how much we trade with America, 77%. This is exports. We've got China at 3.9, United Kingdom at 3.6%. You can see in a pie graph here. This is how much we trade with America. Looking at the numbers, 2024, America, $419 billion. The next closest is China at $21 billion. $19 billion for the UK, Japan, $10 billion, Mexico, $6 billion. Remember when Mark Carney said that Jamaica was one of our most important trading partners? Where's Jamaica? Where is Jamaica? Where's Jamaica? It's down here. We'll find it. There it is. $101 billion. As I said in my video, over the past 10 years with the Liberals, we've roughly made $1 billion from them, and we've sent over $800 million in free handouts, gender sensitive, this, that, and whatever, foreign aid to Jamaica. Make that make sense. Look how far down this is. We scroll back up. One of our most important trading partners. Okay, we're getting sidetracked here, but America's two-way trade with Canada is $420 billion export and about $400 billion import. So its total is around $850 billion, which makes up 34% of Canada's total $2.4 trillion annual economy. When Mark Carney says we can give more to ourselves than any foreign nation could ever take away, insinuating Donald Trump in America, that is a false statement. There's no way of us adding essentially another Ontario of GDP to Canada just with the flick of a switch. That's what we'd be doing if we're replacing America. We'd be adding an entire extra Ontario, the whole thing. I don't believe a single word out of this guy's mouth. He's a chronic liar.
Last month, we signed a historic free trade deal with Indonesia, the world's fourth largest country by population.
That was not historic. That deal was already in the works before you came in. Trudeau did that one last year. It's a loan. That's not a historic deal.
We've just signed foundational agreements with the United Arab Emirates in AI and with the EU in defense and trade and with Germany in critical minerals.
Evan Solomon went over to the UAE. It's one of these phony baloney agreements. There's nothing there. There's no money. There's no goods. Nothing's being traded. Nothing's written down. It's just a phony baloney agreement, shaking hands and signing something.
We're re-engaging with global giants India and China. Well, we deepen our partnerships with our traditional allies. And to build on this momentum, I'm going to put it in context. Our goal for Canada is to double our non-US exports over the course of the next decade, generating more than $300 billion more in trade, And that's new orders for Canadian resources, technologies, and expertise.
That would still make America our biggest trading partner. That's the point here. Make a deal with Donald Trump. I think he has a deal ready. He just doesn't want to do it until he gets closer to the budget so he can hide his awful overspending budget on November 4th. I don't think he's going to give us much more today. It doesn't even seem like he's announcing anything today.
We cut taxes to reduce the cost of housing for first-time homebuyers, some of whom I hope are in this room.
Are you kidding me? Look at that smile there. Does he know he's full of crap? He's talking to a bunch of university students. They don't own houses unless they have rich parents that came from another country that paid for it. This guy is just unbelievable.
This government is getting immigration under control, with asylum claims down by...
Come on.
We are creating jobs as a whole across it.
They're only creating public sector jobs, part-time jobs. All the good jobs are leaving Canada.
And it is a fact that we are forecast to be the second fastest growing economy in the G7 over the course of the next 2 years.
According to who? Ronald McDonald? What is this? What, did he get someone from the Climate Institute to give him a forecast?
We are Canada strong, Canada fall. Vive le Canada.
What was his announcement? He's addressing the nation and he's adding nothing. He went to talk to university students and literally didn't throw them a single bone.
Prime Minister Mark Carney at the University of Ottawa there shaking. How do you think the delivery of that speech matched up to what you thought it should be about?
Imperfect. Look, it showcased the Prime Minister's comfort and ease when it comes to articulating geopolitical issues, macroeconomic issues, the big forces that are shaping and reshaping our world right now, his easy command of policy matters, his comfort. If the purpose of the speech was to tell us what we need to know unmistakably about the budget, what its anchoring priorities are, the key takeaways from the budget that will come down on November 4th, I'm not certain I understood what he was trying to tell us. I mean, is it about doubling trade to countries other than the United States over the course of the next decade? That's what the budget's about. Is it about balancing an operating deficit, which is a brand new concept that wasn't defined in the speech and is not defined in any objective sense, why that matters and how that's an engine for growth. It was in front of a group of students. We were told this was going to be about on a generational appeal. I didn't hear anything that seemed in the most narrow sense, the most sort of tactical sense, targeted toward that audience. So I still don't know, is this budget going to be about austerity, about sacrifices? Is it about dealing with Trump and trade? Is it going to be dealing with growth? I am not crystal clear on what the Prime Minister wanted us to understand about the budget that's coming, and he took 30 minutes to not tell me it.
This is so embarrassing coming from Scott Reid. I mean, it was one thing if it's James Moore or Lisa Raitt or Kathleen Monk or someone else on here, but having this come from Scott Reid is especially embarrassing. That's just it. The only thing Carney announced was what Scott just said there, doubling investment to countries outside of the United States. As I showed here, 77%, $420 billion last year, USD, that we exported to the United States. So, and he said $300 billion. If you add up all this stuff here, this total here is $125 billion or 23%. So even if we doubled this, that would put us at $250 billion, which is still only 59% of what we trade to America. And that's if we double this. It's quite clear who we need to trade with and who we have to have a good relationship with and who we must get a good deal with, and that's the United States of America. Because all these other countries here, it just doesn't add up. It's not enough.
James, what do you think?
Yeah, there was an apex moment in the speech that was frankly missing. I agree with Scott. Like there was a moment in the speech where there's a window after the setup. You connect with the students where you say, and I want Canadians to know that there's a very important budget coming up in 2 weeks. And one fundamental thing that I want you to understand about this budget is that we are going to, and it didn't happen. So I think he kind of missed a window there. I think stylistically it was fine. It might have been a better book than a movie, but I think to Scott's point, like it sort of did showcase his, the breadth of his capacity and the reputational equity that he has based on his resume and so on and so forth. But if he's going to make an argument about how Canada is going to open up our markets with the world and look at all the things that we've done, and he points to a mineral deal with Germany and a letter of intent to have an MOU with the UAE on AI. That's pretty thin stuff. On the
Yeah, I'm glad he brought that up. The Germany mineral deal wasn't a conclusive deal either. This one here, Minister Solomon concludes successful visit to the Gulf to strengthen ties with the UAE and Qatar. Even on the Globe and Mail here, Canada signs non-binding artificial intelligence deal with United Arab Emirates. This is a nothing deal. This literally means nothing.
Economic side, there were two things that I thought were interesting. One was where he said, we're gonna balance the operational budget of the government within the next 3 years. You know, a fun historic fact, Brian Mulroney also balanced the operational budget of the federal government while he was prime minister, but it didn't matter because everything else was spun so out of control that it led to a deficit crisis that resulted in the 1995 budget under Prime Minister Chrétien Martin that got us back towards a balanced trajectory in the 1990s. So balancing the operational point doesn't really deal with the macro fiscal situation that we're in. We have a real structural deficit problem. But a smaller bit in this piece that I thought was interesting, though, in the speech was where he bragged about confronting the Canada Post issue and confronting a $10 million per day deficit that Canada Post was dealing with and saying, we did that because it was necessary and that's what tough leadership looks like. My phrasing, not his. That's a little bit of red meat to New Democrats and a little bit of red meat to progressive and union voters out there that may not like what he did on that front. But I thought that was interesting that he thought that was a point to brag on in terms of his capacity to rationalize federal spending.
Well, this is such a good take, everything you just said there. That point about operational spending and bringing up Brian Mulroney, that really hits it home because he's bringing up a conservative prime minister and they can't use that to clap back because he's not using a liberal as an example.
Yeah, I think just jumping off what both James and Scott said, I think like if you were going into the speech thinking, I want people to walk away, because yes, you're speaking to the audience there, but you've got a national audience on multiple national networks as well. Like, you know, this is my chance to speak directly to Canadians at a time where they're not used to hearing from me, and I want them to walk away thinking X. Like, I am not sure what the X is.
Yeah, and so he did have that setup moment where he said, you know, the next budget is going to be about, and he said it's about building, taking control, and winning. But he didn't define what that is. In fact, you know, maybe if you were to take away something in trying to get into the mind of the speechwriter, what they were trying to do was really try to say, hey, there's going to have to be some sacrifices, and this is going to take some time. So he was trying to almost like precondition Canadians. But what was the failure, I think, tonight, and I don't want to be too hard on it, but I think the failure really is we have auto workers out there who are, you know, realizing that they're waking up to maybe historic job losses, right?
Every day.
We have every day new companies announcing, you know, retractions from Canada. We have steel workers who've been pounded for months now, you know, lumber workers who've been pounded for months who are really, really hurting. We have an affordability crisis where folks can't even pay for rent, never mind, you know, the price of groceries. And he really didn't touch on that. And in fact, the venue did seem a little bit strange because he spoke about the housing affordability measures that he has made for first-time buyers, and then looked at the room of students in the room and said, hopefully some of you are in there. And I can pretty much guarantee that those students who are in the room pretty much don't have the money to scrape together to be a first-time home buyer.
It's amazing that Monk is bringing up this same point I mentioned. Carney's so detached, he doesn't even understand the idea of students not being able to afford a house. The guy's so rich, he was getting something like $16,000 a month in living expenses when he was in the UK, governor of the Bank of England.
Scott, if you were to leave that speech and the prime minister were to say, what do I need to do over the next 2 weeks to make sure that this budget is a political success for our party, what would you tell him?
Well, they got to dig deeper and they have to tell people what he didn't tell them tonight, which is what is this budget going to be about and how does that improve their life and make them more confident about a very perilous time. You know, there's a speech like this has only one job. It's a thermometer speech. It's intended to tell us how to measure the budget, what's good, what's bad, what's hot, what's cold. It's to set out that measurement. I don't really think it did that, and I don't want to be overly harsh, but why call people together to give this speech unless it is to do that? And I don't think he invited Canadians to say, here's the thing I really want to do, but I think that really matters and why it ought to matter to you. This is the basis upon which I want you to judge this, my first budget, at this most critical time as Donald Trump has turned his cannons on our economy. And I think the hardest news out of this probably is the clip that you just showed. We're going to balance the operating deficit over the next 3 years. But again, we don't know what the operating deficit is. We don't know what their definition is. And it drives us to therefore a definition of the budget that is based around fiscal performance. Is that really what he wants Canadians to be focused on? Is that the sum total? Is that the most important thing? So even by its own standards, I didn't really understand the test it was trying to set for Canadians about this budget, the invitation it wanted to make to Canadians as to how to judge this budget. That's got to be fixed in the next 10 days.
This is so embarrassing that Scott Reid is basically ripping this apart for exactly what it is. It was a nothing announcement. There was nothing there. There's nothing new. More of the same, more fear-mongering, more slogans. As I pointed out there, he used his 2 coin slogans he always uses. We can give ourselves more than anyone can ever take away.